what does a finance controller actually does?
So the technical role of a finance controller is to ensure the financial statements and compliances.
Now the question that comes into mind, that if I want to move from this role to say CFO role, what is the skill set that the organization looks into you?
So the fundamental difference between a controller role and an FP&A role is that you have to think beyond compliance. So
I get students who are from banks, public sector banks, or say Indian private sector banks, and they want to move to MNCs. Okay, so they face a lot of challenge in the sense, because say they are 35, 39, and they are kind of stuck in their career. So how should they approach moving from Indian company to MNC?
correct. So this banks to MNC is a very classic problem, and so there are two ways to tackle this. One is that you
For any candidate who wants to move from India to Dubai, because you've been working both the jurisdictions. So how does that work, and what is the difference in the job market? Hello guys, hi, this is Ganesh Nayak. I help finance professionals and students to excel in their career. And as a part of that mission, we are back with one of the interviews, or basically career related interviews in finance. And today we have with us Dhawal. He's going to be helping us with a lot of queries that students have, which they have in their mind when they set out their journey in the finance world. And he's going to be having a candid conversation on that. So Dhawal, thank you very much for joining us and taking time to talk to us.
It's a
And
pleasure to be here, Ganesh. And as always, you've been doing great job, helping finance professionals take their careers to the next level. So I'm happy to be, part of it and contribute a little bit with whatever I can.
sure. So, for the benefit of the audience, if you can give a brief about your journey in the finance world till now, and what are you doing right now?
Sure. So I started my career with chartered accountancy. After completing my chartered accountancy, I took a job with Bharat Petroleum. So after working for about three years in Bharat Petroleum, then I moved to a company called Trafigura, which was into commodity trading. So that was my first two jobs. Over the last 10 years, I've been associated with advertising and marketing industry. So where I've worked in various finance controllership and leadership positions as well. So these are one of the biggest ad agencies in the world, where I was handling everything from controllership to the CFO function, at times one level below CFO, and then finally I moved to a CFO position. Over the
Right.
last 2 years, I have been based in the Middle East. So my CFO role, which was in India, helped me land a role in Dubai as well. So I have been
Okay.
in the Middle East in the last 2 years, again in a regional CFO leadership role. So that
Okay.
was my work history. On the personal
Okay.
front, I'm also involved in training and coaching. So I've been an active mentor over the last 5 years. Effective 1st of April, we have officially launched FP&A Professionals Institute. I've co-founded this along with my partner Asif Masani, where we are training and mentoring students in FP&A, finance
Okay.
leadership, and many other related courses.
Wonderful, because Asif is also very much active on LinkedIn, talking about. So, in my connections, both of you guys are actively talking about FP&A. So I'll come to that part. But when we say finance controller, now I'm asking this question for the audience. What does a finance controller actually does?
Right. So the technical role of a finance controller is to ensure the financial statements and compliances. So the activities revolved around classic preparation of financial statements, consolidation, getting the statutory audit done, internal audit done, making sure that the taxes are compliant, all the regulatory compliances are filed. So the controllership role is primarily into compliance and making sure that all the audits and everything is taken care of. However,
Okay.
if you are working with a small to medium sized organization, your
Mhm.
controller role might also extend into some of the performance management aspects like budgeting, forecasting. So
Okay.
I would say if larger the company, the controllership role is more focused towards compliance. But if it's a
Okay.
small to medium enterprise, then it could be pretty blended. So you might have some commercial elements included in the controller role as well.
Okay. And in a larger organization, you also have FP&A division explicitly.
Yes. So if I have to look at a classic CFO's office, I can divide the
Ah.
CFO's role into two broad aspects, right? So one is compliance, the other one is commercial. Yeah. So the
Okay.
compliance part is taken care of by the controller and his team. And then you have the commercial aspects, which is taken care of by finance director or somebody who's FP&A lead. And they support the CFO with all the performance aspects like the revenues, the budgeting, forecasting, margins analysis, all
Okay.
the financial planning and performance management stuff. So these are the two
Okay.
broad functions, I would say, if we visualize a CFO's office.
Okay. Okay. And you have done the financial controller role also, and you have also moved towards the CFO side in your previous jobs. So now, for the audience, now the question that comes into mind, that if I want to move from this role to say CFO role, what is the skill set that the organization looks into you?
Sure. So the fundamental difference between a controller role and an FP&A role is that you have to think beyond compliance. So FP&A roles are all about supporting business. The CFO side roles are all about supporting the business. And the more
Okay.
you are able to understand the business model, how the company makes money, building relationships, then understanding the commercial aspects of things. So that is what is important in a CFO role. So I would say three or four things that are very critical for somebody to transition from controllership to CFO role. First one would be leadership, because you will be
Okay.
managing a bigger team. As in, when you grow up the ranks, you will end up
Right.
managing a bigger team. So leadership is one. Second thing is
Okay.
strategic information. So strategic understanding about your sector, your industry, what competition is doing, what kind of business are you in, what kind of a business model your company is running. So all this strategic understanding about the industry or the sector is very, very important.
Okay.
The third thing I would say is relationship building. Finance roles are not jobs of isolation, unlike audit or controllership where you sit on a desk and you complete your task and you go home. Finance is very, very dynamic and there's no end point. Like in an audit role, you know that your job starts with the planning the audit and ends with the issue of the audit report. But in finance role, there is no end point as such. So it's all very
Okay.
dynamic, very fluid. uh, I would also say that 60 to 70% of my schedule during the day is very fluid, and it could be consumed by some ad hoc activities. It could be analysis. It could
Okay.
be anything that the CEO needs. It could be anything that a business head needs. There
Okay.
could be some crisis that might be coming on the client side. So supporting the business becomes your number one priority. Everything else takes a backseat. So that would be the understanding or the mindset shift that would be required for you to transition to a CFO role from a controller role.
Okay, wonderful, wonderful. This was a very good summary. I think so. The students will be able to connect now. And like you said in the start, the controller side and the performance measurement side. So these two broader bifurcation was really good. So if somebody wants to enter into these roles, okay, first of all, what certifications do industry value, and any specific skill set that a fresher can have? It could be like a technical skill set of or a soft skill related part.
Right, right. So I think to give a general overview, everybody starts with a classic accounting qualification. It could be a CA, ACCA, CPA, whatever the qualification might be, right?
Right.
Everybody starts with this classic accounting qualification, and we do a host of accounting and compliance oriented roles. And then you reach a point where you've exhausted your options, right? Or if you're looking at a long career span of 20, 30 years, it's not possible for a person to only do FP&A roles or only do accounting oriented roles, right? So
Right.
when you become a CFO, everybody will report to you. The tax manager will report to you, the group reporting guy will report to you, the FP&A guy will report to you. And you
Right.
cannot say that, hey, Mr. Taxes, don't report to me. I don't like taxes. So you don't have much choice, right? So you
Okay.
have to be everywhere. So having said that, I would say one should always look for diverse set of exposures in a long career, and to move from those compliance side roles to commercial side roles, try and get some soft skills is absolutely important. There's communication skills, how you understand the business, business acumen. So these are some of the important skills for you to transition. I would suggest that you try and get a cross functional project first. uh, get involved in any automation project or a project that involves commercial side of things and not really accounting standards and IFRS and taxes and all of that. Keep those things
Okay.
aside. So be
Okay.
open to understand the profitability or take part in implementation of a business intelligence tool, right? So all these things could be possibilities where you can get exposure on the other side, on the commercial side of things. Having said that,
Okay.
somebody who is not ready there, look for commercial qualifications. It would be any courses on FP&A or financial analysis. Tools could also be helpful. Data visualization tools like Power BI, Tableau. At least having a
Okay.
basic understanding of these tools will be very helpful, because the way you communicate with non-finance people is very, very
Hmm.
different. They don't understand 10,000 lines of Excel sheets like we do, right?
Right.
So that's where your communication, your data storytelling, the way you are able to convert insights or take insights and then communicate it to the business teams, that is what
Right.
is important. So I would say tools, soft skills, data storytelling. So these would be some of the critical skills that would be required for you to transition into these kind of roles.
Okay. Apart from the core FP&A certifications, if somebody is getting that, will financial modeling, because there are a lot of people who do equity valuation and financial modeling, will these courses be helpful?
Sure. So I'll give you a perspective about what financial modeling and valuation is. So financial modeling and valuation largely looks at the company from an external standpoint, right? From an investor standpoint.
Hmm.
So ratio analysis, liquidity ratios, investment ratios,
Yes.
all these are from an external standpoint.
Hmm.
Whereas in an FPA function, you are part of within the organization. So you're part of the team there. And so
Hmm.
performance management, like gross margins, pricing, whether department profitability, branch profitability. See,
Okay.
you're looking at internal metrics more as compared to a valuation role, which is looking at the company from an external investor
Hmm.
standpoint. So that is the fundamental difference. Financial modeling is a common skill set which cuts across both internal and external kind of roles, right? So
Hmm.
modeling is a skill. So if you are able to understand financial planning and analysis concepts, then modeling is something which will come and aid you to help you get better with your analysis, you know,
Okay.
get better
Okay.
with your financial models, get better with your scenario planning, get better with your sensitivity analysis. That is the bit where financial modeling will help. Okay. It's not a
Okay.
substitute for core FP&A skills, but it's, I would say, a complement for core FP&A skills.
Okay. Okay. So one more question: does CFA help in this journey?
Again, as far as my limited understanding goes, CFA again is more from a investor standpoint or investment
Hmm.
analysis standpoint. So
Hmm.
somebody who has interest of working in portfolio management, private equity side, then I think their CFO would be much better. Um, will CFO specifically specifically help you to become a CFO? Not necessarily, because
Hmm.
um, becoming a CFO has a combination of uh, whole different sets of skill sets and qualifications. It could be your work experience, it could be your business understanding, it could be a little bit of management experience. All of these things will come into play for you to increase your chances of a CFO kind of a role. But CFA will definitely help you on the financial services side. If you're working with the BFSI industry, you start as an analyst and you want to rise up to the ranks of becoming a partner of a boutique investment firm, then that is the route where I believe CFA would be much more beneficial as compared to
Right.
other qualifications like CA, ACCA.
So primarily, apart from the banking side, I suppose it's a manufacturing company and you want to become a CFO of that. So CFA course might not be able to help you entirely. Obviously, you need other skill set along with that. That's what we are talking about. Hmm.
You will need to develop a host of other skill sets along with these. See, how I see all these qualifications are, these are your entry tickets into the corporate world, whether it's a
Right.
CA, ACCA, CPA, whatever the
Right.
qualification might be.
Right.
So these are your entry tickets into the corporate world. And once you get into the corporate world, you will
Huh.
have to see what industry suits you, what kind of experience you are going to get, and then you keep building on top of it. I started with an oil and gas company, but I never had any plans of working with service industry. But over the last
Okay.
decade, I've been associated with service industry, advertising, marketing, services. This is where I found my peace, and I was able
Okay.
to bring in my skill sets to much better use, I would say. So you'll have to figure out what industry, what sector, what kind of roles will help you progress in your career. And everybody's career journey is very individual. It's very, I would say, unique, right? However, the skill sets are common, but you will have to build your career individually, see what's working for you, and then double down on it.
Okay. Okay. Now, one question specific to FP&A, that even though this role seems to be very important for any organization, till now we do not have a proper certification for it. The way we have, say for example, for investment analysis or risk management, we have FRM, we have for alternative investment there's CIA, but for FP&A there is no global certification which is currently available. Why is that? What do you think about it?
Yes, so there are two aspects to this. One is that FP&A, which I believe is a little bit more of experiential learning, right? So how I started learning budgeting forecasting is go and sit with a senior in some other department, tell me how you are doing it, and then I modeled it in my department. So that's how I learned FP&A. To
Right.
some extent, FP&A, it's very difficult to be adapted into a classroom environment. I cannot show an end-to-end budget in some books, right? I cannot show how an end-to-end forecast is prepared in some books. I can show parts of it. I can talk about it. I can give some brief case studies. But if I have to show an entire gamut of what an FP&A professional does, it's very difficult to capture it in a book, right? So
Hmm.
that is why I feel academics to some extent creates that gap of not giving the requisite FP&A experience. If you look at the job profiles required for FP&A, everybody asks for experience, right? But there's
Yes,
not
yes.
enough. But there's not enough experienced candidates available out there. So I believe
Right.
that will change. More experiential case studies, MBA style case studies is what is required for learning FP&A, rather than the classic. Here's a book, you study it, you attend 100 marks examination, and then you'll be done. So that is not the approach which will work for FP&A.
Okay.
Connected to that, what at FP&A Professionals Institute, so we are also launching a certification called Certified Global FP&A Professional. So we are trying
Okay.
to bring this experiential learning through live coaching program, MBA styles, where you will be given a case study, you'll have to do the pre-reading, and
Hmm.
not those classic styles of, these are the four P's of marketing, this is the pricing. We have been taught classically, right? So we are not adopting that approach,
Okay.
and bringing in MBA style case studies, practical examples where you'll be asked to do some analysis, do some PPT, those kind of things we are trying to bring in, which will help
Okay.
plug this gap of not having enough experienced FP&A professionals.
Right. Wonderful. Now, throughout your career, the way you started out in oil and gas industry and the point that you're doing right now, what are the two three major learnings, if you can share, that this is what you have learned in the entire journey?
2 to 3 learnings. Interesting. So, one, I would say be a little bit open-minded about your career. When we are young, we are too choosy about our profiles. We only want to work in equity research. We only want to work in X or Y or Z profile. But I would say be a little bit open-minded. It's a long 30, 40-year career. Take whatever
Hmm.
is coming to you and see how you can build on top of it. My biggest asset was that I knew that I was always going to work on the industry side. I was never interested in working in a CA firm or a big four kind of a setup. So I knew that
Right.
I was always going to work on the industry side.
Hmm.
Knowing this fact, I was very open for any role that came to me, whether it's a oil and gas company or an advertising company or a software company. So I would say first be a little bit open in the early years of your career, in first five,
Hmm.
7 years of your career. Be willing to experiment. That's one. The second thing is think about your career in terms of blocks of 2 to 3 years. And this is the best career advice that I had got from a very senior CFO. Don't try to look for a 15-year clarity. You will never get it. you know 15
Okay.
years ago, all the Amazons of the world, the Flipkarts of the world did not even exist, right? So don't try and look for a 15-year clarity. Plan for 2 to 3 years and then plan for the next. I would say if you're a manager, first see how you can become a senior manager, how you can become a controller, then look at how you
Okay.
can become CFO, right? You will not get that 15-year clarity. Maybe 3 4 years down the line, you might not even you may decide that you don't want to become a CFO. That's also perfectly
Hmm.
fine. So I
Hmm.
would say look at 2 to 3 years, see what skill sets you want to move to the next level, what
Right.
learning you want to get, and then you plan for your next journey. So that I would say would be a critical learning. The third thing that I learned is that relationships are super, super important. As and when you get senior in your career, gone are the days when you will get jobs through job boards, right? It is your
Hmm.
relationships, it's your network, It is how you build, cross-functional relationships. So many times it has happened that somebody who's a business lead who has joined as a CFO in some other company, asked me or called me that, hey, I'm looking for a CFO, come and join me. Or somebody who
Wow.
I helped, and we both started as juniors in Bharat Petroleum. Now he is some general manager in some good company. I'm a CFO in some other company. We are still in touch. If there is a CFO role, I would be the first person that he will call. I am pretty sure about it. So these kind of lasting relationships with
Hmm.
good 20 to 30 non-finance people in your lifetime, I would say you need to build these. These are the ones who will help you get those senior level jobs once you have that requisite experience, and
Right.
not by applying for job boards. you know
Hmm, hmm,
so
hmm, hmm.
relationships would be absolutely important. So these are the 3 4 learnings that I can sum up.
Wonderful, wonderful. And I can relate to the first point that you said, that don't plan for the future, because when I also started teaching, I never knew that I'll end up doing FRM training, or I'll end up doing explicitly my own institute. So it is always about whether you love doing it or not, or you're enjoying it or not. So that is one point which is very interesting. And the reason I asked you this learning point is that lot of new students or new candidates who are looking to enter into the finance side, the parameter right now for them is salary. In the sense, my I have a student who is actually studying in JBIMS, Jamal Bajaj, and his colleagues got say around 18 lakhs, and he's getting slightly lower, so he's stressed that how will I grow in my career. So what is your take on this?
So now that I have worked for 15 years in the corporate, I'll tell you a very, very interesting fact about salary. Okay. It is not a given that you will get increment every year. It is not a given that
Hmm.
you will get bonuses every year. Okay. So I have had years when I got 25% increment. I have had years when I got zero increment. Okay? Even
Hmm.
though it has nothing to do with my performance. Because
Hmm.
increments or salary, all these are a combination of multiple factors. The kind of sector you are in, the kind of competition you are with, the kind of structure you are with, how good a manager you can get. You know,
Right.
so I believe your career is going to be a combination of three things. Your role or your in general profile, yeah, your
Hmm.
manager, and the kind of industry you work with. Okay, and let me tell you, मैं लिख के दे सकता हूँ, at any given point in time, you will only get two of it. you know you'll get great pay. So you'll get great pay, great manager, but the industry sucks, or the job
Ha
sucks.
ha
Sometimes
ha.
the job is great, your manager is great, but the pay sucks. So at some point in time, you will get only two of them. So I would say that take whatever you are getting. If you're getting a great manager from whom you can learn a lot,
Hmm.
learn from him and then move forward. If you're getting pay, take that pay, and uh, move forward and plan your next move, right? So
Right,
that's the
right.
most practical advice that I can give. So don't look for that dream job. There is nothing called dream job. Okay? You will have to make your job dream job.
But I think so. Now the younger people who are coming in, that I don't think so. Dream job is explicitly there in their mind. But yes, they do because of the information that is coming in, because of
Yeah,
LinkedIn, and so they know that what other people are doing.
right.
So now the comparison is very fast. So that is one area. But
A
like
classic
please, please.
a classic case that I remember, every time I get these
Hmm.
mentoring calls, and some people ask me, if I work in a global shared services setup, of any
Hmm.
company,
Hmm.
a back office function, let's say a EYGDS or a PwC or any of these, shared services center, you know, so will I be labeled as a back office guy, or will I be labeled as, somebody who will never be able to move to the front end? You know,
Hmm.
so I asked him, what do you think these companies are? Are these kind of a black hole that once you go in and you will never be able to come out of these companies? I said, listen to us. Be very open about it. Outsourcing is the future. If today 50 countries are outsourcing their work to India, tomorrow all the 200 countries will outsource their work to India. It's only here to stay, right?
Hmm.
And I have seen people have carved out very rewarding and satisfying careers. They have grown on to become head of shared services, head of this entire, shared services kind of a setup. And they are very
Hmm.
rewarding and satisfying careers. They've traveled across the world to transition the processes to India. It
Right.
can be as great as you can imagine. So there's no point about developing unnecessary bias when you're especially young, that this role is good or this role is bad, this role will be back office, this role will be front office. Absolutely no need to develop these kind of biases, whether about pay or whether about profile. So
Okay.
be willing to
Okay.
experiment, be willing to accept these kind of roles and then build on top of it.
Okay, wonderful. And like you said, the mentorship calls that you're doing, I do. I also do it for FRM and CFA and all. So there are students, and I want your take on this. Okay, so I get students who are from banks, public sector banks, or say Indian private sector banks, and they want to move to MNCs. Okay, so they face a lot of challenge in the sense because say they are 35, 39, and they are kind of stuck in their career. So how should they approach moving from Indian company to MNC?
Correct, correct. So this banks to MNC is a very classic problem, and so there are two ways to tackle this. One is that you get a certification or get a qualification which sends out the message that you are looking at things beyond banking. Okay, let's say for example,
Okay.
if you have worked in a bank for 15 years, but now you want to move on the corporate side, okay, getting
Mm.
any certification or a management program in the fintech space can be one of your window. Now, fintech is very closely linked to the banking sector. There are a lot of
Right.
fintech companies. Fintech is a growing industry. So you can get some management role in these kind of companies. That is one
Mm.
aspect. The second aspect is that people who have experience in the banking space, companies are looking for with people who have prior banking experience in the treasury function, okay, or
Okay.
in the fundraising space, right? Or
Huh.
in a loan syndicate kind of a space where I'm a corporate, I want somebody to head my treasury function or work in the treasury function and who has
Mm.
solid banking relationships in the market,
Right.
and if you have 10, 15 years of experience, you know enough about banking, you have enough contacts in almost every bank, right?
Mm-hmm.
These kind of relationships will
Right.
especially help these kind of companies where you can say, okay, let me come in as a treasury head. I have these banking relationships. It will help, get you a credit line, or it will help you get this loan from the company, or funding from the company, or funding from a banker, or whatever. So
Right.
try and use these common threads that you have in your banking experience, and then transition to these kind of companies, the fintech space, or treasury function in a company,
Mm.
um, or a treasury head kind of a role. So these kind of space would be something very important, and people who are looking for prior banking experience professionals. Yeah.
Right. Okay.
Um, this is how you can transition. That's one of the ways to do it.
Okay. So there is no need to fear basically that I will not be able to move out.
Absolutely not. So find out the common threads. Find out the common threads about your. Let's say if somebody is working in a classic bank as a branch manager,
Hmm.
a branch is a very big entity in a banking setup. You would possibly be managing thousands of crores of deposits. You could be managing 20, 30 people in a branch. He is in fact like a mini CEO of that bank, of that branch,
Right.
right? So use this skill set to transition to a smaller bank in a bigger role, or you could move to a fintech company or any finance company, NBFC, or any
Hmm.
other corporates which are in, which will require your strong banking relationships. So there are ways we can find some related threads,
Hmm.
from your experience, and use those threads, bring them on top of your resume. I would say the first half of page of your resume is a very big real estate, right? So you use your common threads, common skill sets to give something upfront in the first para itself. you know
Okay.
for example, if
Okay.
I was in a bank, I would say chartered accountant with 1.5 decades of banking experience, experienced in private banking, fundraising, blah blah blah, in the first 2 3 sentences. Then if
Okay.
there is a recruiter who's looking for this kind of an experience, he'll get it in the first sentence itself and say, okay, let me call this guy and figure out what this guy has done.
Okay. Okay. Wonderful. Wonderful. And if suppose any candidate who wants to move from India to Dubai, because you have been working in both the jurisdictions. So how does that work, and what is the difference in the job market?
Sure, sure. Let me first start with the difference in the job market. Okay. So Dubai or Middle East as a job market, first of all, it is hyper competitive. Okay. So
Okay.
people are coming from Philippines, Pakistan,
Hmm.
Egypt, Lebanon, Jordan. Okay. They
Okay.
are all coming here looking for better opportunities. Okay. Which means if you are an Indian chartered accountant or a ICWA, expecting something special to happen as a junior. Don't expect that. That's the that's the first. I'm doing a reality check here.
Okay.
Um,
Okay.
that's number one. Number two, the environment is very different here because the compliance complications are comparatively less. Okay. In India, you have tons of taxes. Corporate tax in itself is an ocean. It's so complicated. Transfer pricing is complicated. You have GST, which is another set of complication. We don't have these complications here in Dubai. So, which means that why would a person hire a chartered accountant when there are no complications like this? I can hire any accountant. I can hire anybody who doesn't have these
Okay.
complicated experiences. Okay, at a much more competitive price. You know,
Right.
so look for roles where your skill sets are truly coming to use. So that's what I would say. Don't just simply come here because initially somebody, instead of 1 lakh in India, you would get a 2 lakh rupee salary here, but you'll end up spending that in expenses as well, right? So just
Right.
don't come because of the monetary value. Come truly if your experience is matching with the job profile. If you feel that you're going to learn something here, the best way to get a role in Dubai or anywhere in the Middle East would be through your network. If somebody approaches you that, hey, we have this vacancy, why don't you come, or try and get it through your connections or through a known reference, then that is very, very important. Otherwise, there could be tens and thousands of companies here where you could apply through a job board, then you come here and realize that, shit, this is not what I was looking for. you know so
Okay.
coming through a reference is very, very important. And truly, if the skill sets are matching the experience, and if you think you will gain from this experience, then come. Otherwise, don't come. I had never actually planned to move to Dubai, and it all happened because of my prior advertising industry experience. An advertising industry, a PR company CEO reached out to me and said that, hey, I'm looking for somebody like you. Why don't we get into a conversation? A couple of round of Zoom calls, and they went like 1 hour, 1.5 hour Zoom calls. I did a couple of them. And then he said, okay, I think, you seem to be a good fit. So why don't you come on board and we'll start, and that's how it started. So
Okay.
the best
Okay.
way to get a role would be through an acquaintance.
But if suppose somebody doesn't have an acquaintance and he wants to try,
Yeah.
so it is advisable to come there and then apply.
uh, I wouldn't advise that, because you can come for a few days for the interview, but if you're planning to come and stay here for a month or so and then apply, first of all, it's very expensive. Okay. Even if you get a job and you plan to move to Dubai, at least make sure that you have, 3 to 4 lakhs in your bank account, because there are things like quarterly rent advance and all of that stuff. So you have to pay your rent advance every quarter. So it's not, and some landlords ask for yearly rent in advance. You see.
Right. You have to give checks.
Yes, and you don't get medical insurance if you're not working with any
Oh.
company. So
Okay.
all of these things are very, very critical, and healthcare is super expensive. So these things, if you are not planning for these properly, then it's difficult. If you have made provision for this, then you can come and search for jobs. Otherwise, it's not possible. One other tip I would say for Middle East is that look for common threads again. Like for example, let's say back in India, if you're working with an insurance company, your best bet would be to apply to an insurance company here in a finance role. Yeah. If
Okay.
you're working with a big four back in India, your best bet would be to apply for a big four or equivalent CA firm here first.
Okay.
Work there, get some local experience, 2 to 3 years experience, and then venture out into other roles. By that time, you would have understood the market, you would have built some local connections as well,
Right.
and then you can transition into some other experience as well. So
Okay.
look for
Okay.
common threads and then come here.
Okay. So wonderful. And final points from your side. What anybody who is looking out to have a career in finance, what are the final points that you want to highlight? And then we'll close the discussion.
Sure. I would say that be curious about your roles. Businesses are not run by accounting standards or US GAAP or all these compliance elements. So look for things beyond this. When you're working in an organization, um, be curious about understanding how this large organization works. So when I was working with Bharat Petroleum, my first curiosity was, how do 15,000 people work together, to achieve a common objective? So be curious about your roles beyond your finance and accounting. That is when you
Okay.
will be able to truly learn and have a satisfying career. If you're trying to find pleasure in your Excel sheets, you can to some extent, but beyond that, if you're not able to place yourself in a larger context of how
Right.
your role is much more meaningful, how you're contributing to the larger scheme of things, then
Hmm.
you lose out interest very fast. So be curious about it. The other
Okay.
thing I would say is a little bit research based. I would say the latest statistic, and we did a recent survey, 79% of the CFOs are finding it difficult to find the right FP&A talent. Okay, so FP&A is a hot topic today. So if you want to transition into a finance career, I think starting with an FP&A qualification or a certification would be much easier today. And see, FP&A is not just about some planning analysis, fancy dashboards, right? It's all about working on the finance side and supporting the business, right? So
Right.
that can be your good segue into the finance world, and
Hmm.
even help you rise up to the ranks of becoming a CFO if you have the right set of experience and skill sets. Yeah, so that would
Okay.
be my second piece of advice.
Wonderful, wonderful, Dhawal. It was great, great conversation, and I'm sure the audience who's going to watch this video, they will get good insights with respect to what is the FP&A role, what does a CFO do, and how what skill set they need. So get some clarity because right now the information is not there. Nobody's talking about if you want to become a CFO, what you should be doing. So all of these things definitely will really help them. So thank you very much for taking out time and talking to us and sharing your experience.
My pleasure, Ganesh, and all the very best for your podcast and your institute as well, and all the very best to all our audience here. Go out there, have fun with your finance careers. I'm sure it will be rewarding, and give it time. Maybe 10, 15 years down the line, you will look back and look at your careers and say, "Yeah, I've done some pretty cool stuff, beyond Excel sheets." So that is what all of us are looking for. So all the very best to you guys.
Wonderful. Thank you.